In our previous lecture, we have discussed about the concept of ratios and equivalent ratios. Today, we are going to understand the concept of proportion as the ratios are basically used always in conjunction with proportions. Whenever we talk about the ratios, proportions are always there. So we will start from the definition of proportion, that what are proportions, so that you may differentiate easily from the ratios. How it is defined as, at various places it has a different definition, but the concept at the end is the same. It may be defined as the relationship of equality of two ratios, of equality of two ratios. We have already discussed the concept of equivalent ratios. It is somewhat the same as the proportions. Okay, but when we talk about the proportions, we have to write it in a proper form with its notation. We may at some places proportion is also defined as when two ratios are equal, or the equivalent ratio, when two ratios are equal. Okay, another definition is, but at the end you will see that the concept is the same. Okay, another definition is type of ratio that relates one part to the other or the whole. One part to the other or whole. Okay. Okay, it was all about the definition of proportion, that how it is defined as compared to the ratio, so that you may have a clear difference between ratio and proportions. Let's take an example to clarify its concept properly. Okay, we have an example which is stated as, John bought two balloons. John bought two balloons at the rate of $3 per balloon. $3 per balloon. So how much we have to find is, how much did he pay for two balloons? John bought two balloons at the rate of $3 per balloon. It means one balloon was of the cost of one balloon was $3. So we are going to find here how much did he pay for the two balloons. So let's find it by the concept of proportion, as the cost of one balloon is equals to $3, then the cost of two balloons is obviously 3 multiplied by 2 equals to $6. Okay, how we can represent it in the form of proportion? As we will write it as balloons here and cost here. Okay, the ratio of balloon, and we can write it as, for one balloon the cost was $3. Okay, and for two balloons The cost was $6. So in the form of ratio, it may be written as, or in the form of proportion, it can be written as 1:2 equals to 3:6. So it is clear from here that 1:2 is equivalent to 3:6. So we can also say that the concept of proportion is derived from the equivalent ratios. So these are the equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios, as both sides of equality are equal. If we say 1 out of 2, it means a 1 part out of 2 part, and if we say 3 out of 6, then it is exactly the same. If we reduce the 3 into 6, then we exactly get the same answer, that is 1:2. This means that the two ratios are proportional to each other. Okay? Let's see how we can represent the proportion. This was the concept of proportion in which we have seen how it is related to the equivalent ratios. Let's see how we can represent the proportions in such a case. We'll see its representation or notation. How it is basically represented. Proportion is basically represented as, for example, we have four quantities, 1:2 and 25:50, as both of these are equal. Now when we represent it in the proportion form, we will write it like this: the four dots in between the two. So this is the representation of proportion. Representation. This is how we represent a proportion. Now, how we can read it as, these are the means, okay, and these are the extremes. So keep these notation in mind, that the two quantities which are between the first and the last numbers are the means, and the first and the last numbers are the extremes in case of proportion. Now we can verify the equality in a proportion, but how? Let's see. We can verify it as, if we have a proportion as we have discussed above is 1:2, proportion 25:50, we can verify its equality by the formula product of means. This is a very important formula to verify the equality of proportion, equal to product of extremes. As we have seen what are the means and extremes above, so we multiply the means, where the means are 2 and 25. So we multiply it as 2 into 25, and the extremes are 50 and 1, means 1 into 50. So the answer is 50 equals to 50. So it means the left hand side is equal to right hand side, and this is the way how we can verify the proportion. Okay, let's take an example to understand the concept more clearly. For example, you have the example, and you want to find that whether the given two ratios are in proportion or not. For example, this is the ratio that is being given to find out whether it is in proportion or not. Okay, let's find it by multiplying in this way. Product of means is equal to product of extremes. Let's write it as product of means is equals to product of extremes. It can be written as means are 5 into 6 equals to 5 into 6 equals to 5 into 2. It's 30 and it's 10. It means the two ratios are not in proportion. It means that they are not satisfying the condition of the equality of left hand side equals to right hand side. So the two ratios are not in proportion. So this is how you can find whether the given ratios are in proportion or not.